Hi, everybody. I'm coming at you actually from my wife's office at FSU's campus. Obviously, there's a little bit of rebellion going on here. But I wanted to talk to you about methodology and specifically what I'm expecting of you guys in the methods section of your senior seminar paper. So, as you guys know from taking research methods before, the research method is really what you're doing in your proposal. What are you proposing to actually do? So you've come up with this argument, you've got your intro, you've got your literature review, and you're leading us to the logical conclusion that your research question is a very important research question. Now that we know that, what's the best way to test that research question? And so what I'm looking for is quite literally a very, very detailed recipe of what you're going to do. Much like in a recipe, you have the list of ingredients and then it tells you exactly what you're supposed to do in each step along the way. That's what your method section should do in this class. You should start with your ingredients, right? Who are your participant population? What are your dependent measures? What are your independent measures? What are you manipulating in general? If it's a survey, what are the items on your questionnaire? All of that is kind of the ingredients section that then leads into the procedure section. So what are participants going to do? And so basically from the second they walk in the door to the second they leave, what is expected? If you're doing experimental design, you need to go through each step. If it's literally just a survey, you could just talk about the survey design that basically they're going to be asked to complete the survey and in what format they're going to be asked to complete the survey. A method section should be so detailed that anyone who reads your paper should be able to perfectly replicate your study. This seems a little weird on its face compared to business secrets or trade secrets or anything else. But in science, the reason that we want that is because we want to be able to challenge the methodology to see if it's a legitimate method or not. It could be the case that somebody makes a claim that seems kind of outrageous, and you're like, well, wait a minute. How did you come up with that claim? Oh, well, I did a study. Well, what was the study, right? And I can give you an example of this. Um, I can't remember exactly when. I can't even remember the citation for it off the top of my head right now. But there was a study done. Actually, the response to the study was done here at Florida State by Gary Kleck in the criminology department. But there was kind of a natural experiment that took place in the state of Florida because Florida went from a may issue concealed carry state to a shall issue concealed carry state, which basically the substantive difference between the two is may issue means you had to have a legitimate reason. You submitted that reason to the state, and the state evaluated and decided, is this a legitimate reason or not? And the state could deny or approve your concealed carry request that way. When Florida switched to a shall issue state, it means you don't have to have a reason anymore. It is a right for you to bear arms, and so Florida, as long as you aren't a felon, you're of the proper age, and there's a couple other restrictions. As long as you meet all those requirements, you will get issued a concealed carry permit. Of course, critics of this new law suggest this is going to cause homicide rates to just skyrocket. There's going to be huge murders on the streets all over the place. So what happened was researchers decided, why don't we look and see in the 18 months pre shall issue law passage, what's the homicide rates and what happened in the 18 months? And I can't remember the exact time period afterward. And so what they did was they examined a bunch of cities, and then they decided Jacksonville and Tampa were two cities that most represented Florida. And so only those two cities were going to be included in the analysis. And we know that because they gave us a very detailed analysis of what they were doing. And so they only included those two cities. They're the most representative. That's what's going to happen. And what they found was that homicide rates increased pretty drastically after this shall issue law was passed. Gary Kleck here at FSU said, well, wait a minute. We have access for the whole state to this data. You could look, why are you only picking two cities to represent the state? Jacksonville and Tampa are not really as representative as the authors are making it sound. And he had some rationale for that. So he said, why don't we include Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Orlando, Tallahassee, Jacksonville, Tampa? So we have all of the major metropolitan areas in the city that have a lot more diversity in them ethnically and racially. and get us closer to kind of a true picture of what's going on in Florida. And what he found out is that by adding all of those other major population centers, you actually saw crime rates decrease with the presence of more concealed carry permit holders. And so the suggestion is, well, the reason the initial authors chose to only include Jacksonville and Tampa was because they got the results they wanted from those two, because they were trying to push a policy agenda of we need to get rid of concealed carry permits. Whereas when Gary Kleck here at FSU said, well, let's actually examine the true state of the state, they found actually it had the opposite effect of what the other researchers said. Now, regardless of which side you agree with, right, and regardless of where you feel on that, on the issue of gun control, I'm not advocating for a policy position here. All I'm saying is by having those methods sections, we're able to critically evaluate. The research question is the same in both studies, right? Even the methodology more or less is the same in both studies. The difference was include Orlando, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and Tallahassee, or don't include those cities. And so that's then where the debate can kind of come in. However, if we didn't know that the original researchers only included 2 cities, or didn't know what other cities Gary Cluck included in his study, we would have a hard time really evaluating the veracity of the research. And so that's why it's so important to actually be as detailed as possible, be as specific as possible in your research method section, because people should be able to completely replicate your study and also understand what you're asking people. There are, for example, we've all heard the statistic that 1 in 4 women is sexually assaulted on college campuses, right? That's a hot statistic that's discussed all the time. However, the way that sexual assault is defined in that study is any unwanted touching by a member of the opposite sex, to include hand holding or putting your arm around you, or any sort of unwanted touching. And so if some drunk guy at a bar stumbles up to you and puts his arm around you and goes, "Hello, gorgeous," that hits, and assuming you didn't like it, that hits the threshold for what would be defined as a sexual assault. And so a lot of the kind of moral panic around sexual assault on college campuses, it suggests that it's kind of some fairly serious sexual assault cases. However, in more recent research that kind of dives into this a little bit more, goes, well, how are we defining sexual assault and what is sexual assault? The prevalence of sexual assault is not nearly as high as originally believed. And so, and again, please hear me out here. I'm not suggesting that it doesn't happen. I'm not denying that it happens. And I'm also not suggesting that having some drunk guy put his arm around you is okay and you just need to deal with that. That's not the case at all. The point is, once you start seeing how people are defining variables and measuring variables in this method section, you start to go, oh, okay, it's not quite as dangerous for me to send my daughter to college as I thought, because that was actually one of the initial backlashes from this 1 in 4 females are sexually assaulted. A lot of parents sort of say, well, I don't want to send my daughters to college then, because if they're going, basically, I wouldn't send my kid on a roller coaster if there was a 1 in 4 chance the roller coaster was going to go flying off the rails. Why in the world am I going to send my daughter to a college? And that actually has the kind of inverse effect of what you're hoping when you're raising a daughter to try and grow up and be a strong woman who can, go out into the workforce and be an educated person and everything else. And so that's where this methods and methodology discussion becomes very, very important. So what is expected of you guys? Well, you guys obviously have a sample paper posted from a student, but also if we go back to, he couldn't have done it, he was with me, the infamous paper that I had you guys review before by Heather Price. What you'll see here is, and hang on, I'm sorry, I need to share my screen so you can see this. Okay, what we see here is that in this method section, we scroll down to the methods. Granted, it's not particularly long in her paper, but again, her paper's only 7 pages. I need a little bit more detail than what she provides, because in any sort of surveys or questionnaires that you guys are doing, I want to see every single questionnaire item. Don't just say, I'll give them a questionnaire. That's not good enough. You need to actually write the questionnaire. A questionnaire should also not be 5 questions. That's not a questionnaire. Most surveys you fill out or questionnaires you fill out are probably like 25, 30, 50 questions. I expect about that many items on it as well. But we can see here, and hers is past tense because she actually collected the data. Yours, you're proposing it, so yours shall be future tense. So she had 100 and 24 male and female, and you can see she had 38 male and 86 female, university and college students between the ages of 18 and 60. You see the average age is 24 with a standard deviation of 8.2. They participated individually in return for bonus points in an introductory psychology course. So now we know how she got them. What was their incentive to do this? If you want to pay people, you can say that. If you want to give them extra credit, you can do that. There should typically be some sort of incentive in order to actually drive people to want to participate. The participants were randomly divided into experimental conditions. The study was a 2-by-2, so witness age. So people were either they saw a 6-year-old or a 25-year-old person, and then by 2, alibi relationship, they either saw a son or a neighbor. So you either saw a 6-year-old son, a 6-year-old neighbor, or a 25-year-old son or a 25-year-old neighbor in one of those 4 conditions. And that's why she needed 125 participants. You typically in a 2-by-2 design like this want 25 to 30 participants per condition. And there's 4 conditions times 25 is roughly 100 to 120 participants, which is basically what she has. You don't want to collect too much data because the problem with over collecting is then everything will pop as significant in social science research. And so it's very important that you have enough power, but not overpowered. And that's more of a grad school topic that could be discussed. And I know that you gloss over it fairly quickly in your undergraduate methods course, but for now, just kind of a general rule of thumb is for each condition you have, aim for about 25 to 30 participants. So now the materials and procedures. And again, you'll see here that we've got a step-by-step. So we know who she's studying. We know what conditions they're going to be in. We already know her research questions. Is there a difference between age and relationship, and do those things interact with each other? So what we see is when participants arrived, so again, as soon as they walked through the door, right, they were informed that they would be taken on the role of a police officer, being given information about a crime, and will participate in a mock investigation of that crime. So straight out of the gate, you already know what they're doing. They're pretending to be cops. We already know the question is about alibi corroboration. So probably, without even reading any further, we can start to deduce probably what's going to happen is they're going to come in, get told they're going to be a cop. They're going to see one of these 4 conditions of an alibi, and they're going to have to evaluate how strong is this alibi, or do you not really believe it? They're given a police file that described a robbery and an eyewitness description of the 50-year-old culprit, blah, 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 right? And I mean, you guys can all read. So you can see where they literally went step by step here. They were shown a video of either a child or an alibi witness. You can see that after participants saw the video, they rated the probability. Finally, as a manipulation check, the participants were told to indicate the alibi's witness's age and relationship. So you can see quite literally a step by step of what they did in this project. And then you can evaluate, is this the best way to actually go about doing that project? I've had students in the past that have come up with some very creative, but some ethically and legally sketchy study manipulations and methodologies. And that's something that I really want you guys to think through is if you could turn this into a master's thesis, make it practical, make it doable, and do it with a budget that kind of makes sense. Don't say you're going to travel to every city in America, pay everyone $5,000 and survey the entire country. You would need billions and billions of dollars to do that. It's just not practical. I have had a couple students now take their senior SEM papers that extend from their methods papers and use them as their master's theses. And some of them are even continuing that line of research into their PhDs. And so if you take the project seriously now, it will save you a tremendous amount of time and effort once you go to graduate school, because you can and also you'll have a writing sample. Here's what I want to do. Here's my project. I flushed it out quite a bit. I have a rough methodology, and then you and your advisor have a kicking off point from the day you start graduate school, if you decide to do that. So you can see, and I'll, if I can, I will go back to modules, and I'll show you the sample paper also, which is probably a little bit more helpful. Well, thesis presentation. These are my dissertation and thesis. They do that also. You can see. Well, I wonder, maybe I need to upload a sample paper for you guys. I apologize. I'm just now realizing it's not there. But let's just look at my thesis. All right. And this this counts as a sample paper too, right? So if I scroll down, by the way, everybody, go Gators. All right. Let all these people out there know, go Gators. If you scroll down to my method section, all right, let's just go to study 1 method. All right. This is a 2-study thesis, so I need to go to page 19. This is supposed to be a hyperlink that takes me there, but I guess not. So we'll just type 19 up here. 19. I guess I can't do that either. Let's go to 15 and then scroll down. All right, bear with me here, everyone. I'm sorry about this. So you can see participants are 75 undergraduate students between the ages of 18 and 25, right? I give a racial breakdown. I give the demographics, gender. Here's the design. Participants are randomly assigned to one of 3 conditions. And the basic premise of this thesis was alibi corroboration, the effects of suggestive questioning on potential alibi corroborators. So are police able to push or pull someone toward or away from offering an alibi to somebody if they ask questions in just a different format? And so you see here, here's one condition, here's the next condition, and finally just a simple sentence as a control condition. Here's the procedure. After reading directions, researcher gave participants a test, left the room, goes into detail about what the design of the study is, and then what are the dependent measures. You can see here that they had a verbal yes or no, and then a questionnaire that was adapted from Kensley and Levitt, who I'm actually co-authoring this paper with. And the questionnaire is attached in Appendix B. If we scroll down to Appendix B, what you will see is, if it shows up, it's Appendix D, where Appendix C, and here is Appendix B, right? And so you can see it's a fairly long questionnaire, and it is literally, I have attached and included every single question that I ask them so that people can evaluate under this. Are you willing to provide an alibi? This is alibi corroboration and confidence. So are you willing to, yes or no? And that's a dependent measure all by itself. Then questions 2 through questions 11, all are just trying to gauge the person's confidence in their alibi. I'm unsure if the suspect cheated. I'm 100% confident the suspect actually cheated. I have no doubt about whether the suspect actually cheated on the test. There's nothing that convinced me that the suspect cheated. All of these together are forming the one variable of alibi confidence. And so basically what we ended up doing is whatever people circled, you total up their total number. So 6, 4, 5, 4, 3, add it all up, divide by 10, because that's the number of items that were in this variable, to get the average. And we do that for all the participants as a group, and say, if they saw this condition, the average person that saw this condition was this confident. In this condition, they were this confident. In the control condition, they were this confident, right? And then you compare those 2 conditions to the control group. Now, again, this is getting a little bit more detail than you'll need, but you can see where I've listed every single item. You can choose to put those in text or as an appendix at the end. It's entirely up to you, but it's important that if you're doing a survey or questionnaire of any type, that every single question with the response options are available so that people can completely replicate this process. So with that being said, I'm going to stop sharing the screen and just say, really the important thing here is detail. Detail, detail, detail. Make sure every word means what you think it means. When you're making a questionnaire also, you don't want to make it and show me how smart you are by using big words, because most participants that you have will not be able to understand what you mean. You also want to avoid double-barreled questions, right? You can't say something like, I like hot dogs with ketchup on them, because like, well, what if someone likes hot dogs, but they don't like ketchup? Or someone likes ketchup, but they don't really put it on their hot dogs? You're not really getting, the same effect. That's too. There's too many variables there. Or Dr. Behl is funny, handsome, and smart. It's like, well, what if y'all only think I'm funny and I'm not very smart and I'm not very handsome, right? Especially when I haven't shaved in a while. How do you answer that question? Do you agree with it? Do you disagree with it? It becomes very demanding, right? Also, and this is one of the most common mistakes that I see students make, is they frame agree to disagree items as a question, which it's not, right? So it doesn't make sense to say, do you like hot dogs? Strongly agree. What does strongly agree mean? Do you like them or do you not like them? So it has to be a statement. I like hot dogs. You can agree with that or you can disagree with that. Well, no, I don't like hot dogs. I can disagree with I like hot dogs, right? So make sure you're not framing these as questions, but as statements that make, you can either agree or disagree with. So with all that being said, that's a basic rundown of your methodologies. Obviously, cater all of those to your specific research topics, and your research question should drive the methodology, not the other way around. So whatever your research question is going to, the methodology kind of has to match it. It would be weird if I said, I want to know everyone's height and weight. because I want to see if height and weight are correlated with each other. And the best way to collect that data is through in-depth interviews. Well, probably not. If I the same thing, height and weight, and I'm going to do a survey. Okay, a survey makes sense, right? Height and weight, and I'm going to run an experiment. What's the experiment? Like, how could you possibly do an experiment to determine height and weight, right? So your research question does always kind of suggest a method inherent to it. So make sure that those things are matching up also. As always, if you have any questions, I'm here for you for anything you need, and let me know what I can do to help. And if nothing else, I look forward to reading them. Y'all have a great day, and as always, go Gators.